today I had to try not to put depressing things at the beginning or end. All these things going wrong with plants, all these exotic, non-native invasive diseases and pests. Pests means diseases and insects and mites and all things that are pests of plants. But we so strongly associate pest with insect that we always end up having to say pests and disease, which is redundant. And I have this thing about if we could be a little less redundant and a little less silly with some of the words. What was the word I was just but they put endings on words that, preventative. What's wrong with preventive? Why did we have to go preventative? And there are words like that kind of get to me. So pests and disease get to me too. 51st time for welcoming people on Friday. I think that's remarkable enough to be remarking on it. Uh-oh. There we go. I was reading about skippers as I watched a set of skippers flying around next to me pretty much all day. There were 4 or 5 of them, and they were on the butterfly bush next to where I was pruning all day. And I kept trying to catch a better sight of them so that I could tell which of the many kinds of skippers they are. And I got it down to maybe a roadside skipper. That's a great name. Or a tawny skipper. And one of the hosts, because I'm looking to see what host plants what are they eating as caterpillars? What do we need to keep around for them? And one of those, roadside skipper, I think, it's a host on various grasses and sedges, including bluegrass. So one of the things that people are killing when they're killing insects in their lawn is they're killing these little skippers. They're butterflies. They're not moths. They're fast. I love watching skippers, especially the blue ones in the springtime. Oh, go ahead, Nancy.
I have a question. You've talked before about
Aster yellows.
aster yellows that can affect various plants. Do you know, would it affect Burgart and sage?
No, sage is a salvia. Aster yellows affects the members of the aster family, the daisies, the chrysanthemums, the coneflowers, black-eyed Susans. Um, it's a big family, the daisy family, but sage is in the salvia family. It's in its own separate group, and they don't share diseases. It's kind of like there are some things that cross family lines. I understand there are some things that dogs and cats can get that we can get, but for the most part, they have their own pathogens and we have ours.
Okay.
And so it goes with the families too, with the plant families also.
So any idea what would cause our sage just to wilt? We've got kind of a patch that's maybe 1.5 feet wide and maybe 4 feet long. And plants in the middle of that patch are just wilting.
Chances are good that the crown was damaged. I mean, it's a woody plant, and there may have been some damage to the center of the crown. If you go, the salvias that are woody,
Mhm.
including Burgarten, are they're plants that belong in a drier, warmer growing season climate. And for us, they build up pinpoint infections on the branches as the branches get older.
Mhm.
And you can actually see the cankers on the branches if you take a good look at them. And in a mild winter, those fungus can grow when the plant's not growing and get ahead of things. So I would look at the base of the stems that are dying and see if you see any discoloration. You may have to clip them out. Sometimes you have to take a plant like that and lay down the woody branches and cover them over with some loose soil in order to make some of them root from the nodes of the where the leaves join the branches so that you get a second root system started.
Okay.
Can we dig it out?
The ones that have been wilting, I've just been cutting out so they don't look so bad. But should we actually dig the plant out and then lay the healthy ones over?
Well, no, you should be able to see into the center where you're clipping those out what what
What's
the
causing?
color is at the base of the other stem, other woody stems. You shouldn't have to dig the whole thing out, not unless it turns out that all the stems are on their way out, because
Okay,
it's possible.
okay, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And just a follow up to last Friday, we were talking about these maple trees that Laura wondered what had happened to them, and we said it looks an awful lot like herbicide damage. And we suggested looking at the base of the plants that could easily happen from something spilled on the street, from something applied to the lawn underneath the trees, to something having been applied to the mulch before the mulch was piled up on the tree trunks. And someone, I'm sorry, I've forgotten who, emailed to say that also on the sidewalk, and if they looked good in the fall, and by the next spring we're not looking good, chances are good that there was some kind of de-icer or something put on there. It looks a lot more like herbicide damage than salt damage. Salt damage usually ends up with brown edges on the leaves and holes in the leaves when they come out. But yeah, any place that is where the roots are could cause a problem there. And I also said that I would get a picture of the heptacodia we were showing you about pruning from a little guy that only extended about 6 inches above this cage. And then 2 years later, year and a half later, we took to pruning it down to just several trunks so we could get a tree form. And here's what it looks like now. This would be 15 months later. And because it's in the shade, until we take these struggling dying back spruces down, it's in part shade, so it probably won't get a lot of branches down here, which is fine with us because we want it to be a tree form. But if once it's out in the full sun and we've got those spruces out of there, it might try to be a tree form, a shrub form, and then we'll have to take branches off from lower down again.
Yep.
Oh, hi, Stephen.
Hello.
I
I've
didn't.
been here.
Um,
Here at 6:53 approximately.
okay, approximately. We used to say quarter to, almost six. Yeah. Bernadette sent a note. She said, well, now I'm shading the plants in case they're getting too much sun. And this has to do with the watermelon, that the leaves were beginning to curl over. You can kind of see them drooping, going over the stone right here. And she said, now the base, the leaves further back toward the plant seem to be turning yellow. And I told her, get to the very base of the plant, the very stalk, because there's a real good chance that there's a borer in there, and it's doing more damage all the time. You've got to get to it. But could also be that these leaves are beginning to be infected with mildew, because they will often yellow first. But it could be either way, and it also could be, we're thinking about the water. Um, Professor Weaver at the University of Nebraska from about 1920, so actually I think a little earlier than 1920 to sometime in the late 30s, dug up large areas of Nebraska and Iowa, um, looking to see how roots grew. And the University of Nebraska at Lincoln has put all of his stuff online. If you Google University of Nebraska Weaver papers, you can get just hundreds of papers. And this is a picture of here's watermelon roots. And these are the watermelon roots from I think it was a 35-day-old plant, but they're going 13 to 16 feet away. And they're intolerant of poor aeration. And they have a taproot 7 inches long. Well, the watermelon that Bernie is growing. She said she has a well-drained soil, and then afterwards corrected that to she's put well-drained soil to make a raised bed on top of the hard-packed soil that's there. And since the greatest root activity for watermelon and many of these crops is in the top 8 to 12 inches, you got to think about what that is. Here's a muskmelon cantaloupe. This is 1 foot. It's a 1 foot grid, and this is a real root system. Professor Weaver and his students trenched next to plants and then mapped the roots. And they trenched as deep as they needed to trench to find out that the cantaloupe, 35 days old, had roots going on 2 feet deep. So with plants trying to grow like that, if there's a hard packed layer, and let's say that you've got 8 inches. Most people don't make a raised bed that high, but let's say you've got 8 inches of good loose soil on top of hard packed soil. That root, which wants to be that deep, is going to get down to that layer and then go sideways, just like it ran into the side of a pot. So there'll be a bunch of layer of roots laying on the bottom of the well aerated soil. And when you get a heavy rain and the rain comes quickly through the soil that's loose, when it hits that layer of hard packed soil, it perches. It's called a perched water table. And it perches right where all those roots are and rots roots. And that could be happening too because we had heavy rain. So I thought we should probably make sure that people understand that drainage, good drainage, doesn't mean whether it runs away off the surface. It means how fast the water can go all the way down through the soil and below the root zone.
Uh, we have a question from RK. I just received a panicle hydrangea that I ordered. One of the main branches has been at a 90-degree angle and crossing over, rubbing against other branches. Would you cut back now or plant and let it get established, then prune?
I would let the pruning go until next year, except on the roots, and make the roots look good, and act like they're supposed to act. But I'd let it have every leaf that it has for this year. Chances are good with panicle hydrangea that I'm going to chop it way down low anyway and take that out of there. But there's no reason that you have to take it out right away.
All right. Let's get started because it's just about 7 o'clock,
Okay.
or it is after 7.
Oh dear. Well,
So
let's make sure that those microphones are muted and people know about getting into the chat and raise your hand. I see names that we all know. Hello, Elizabeth. Haven't seen you for a while. Um, and we're hearing from Nancy that her raise hand command has moved again. Chat, I think you all know about, but her raise hand was in reactions last week, and this week it's showed up again on the
yeah,
participants menu. Yeah.
it's here on my menu too. Well,
Oh, you have a raise hand? Maybe because
yeah.
it was in here before you were. Okay, Stephen.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to Free for All Friday, our 51st edition, where we welcome all gardeners to come and celebrate growing and cultivate problem solving.
Yeah, that's us at gardenatz.org. I'm Janet. That's Steve. And we are, where the heck are we there? Wow, boy, have
My
the
yard.
plants grown. I don't think we could stand side by side in that area now with all the things hanging over the edges.
Nope.
We are gardeners who like to talk with other gardeners because we've learned so much just by talking to people about things that expand our experience through, well, vicariously. But we're also very curious and look a lot of things up. So we started the website gardenatz.org. We hope you'll tell people about it, because we're trying to get our writing there so that we can keep on stepping up from where we've learned before. And you found the Free for All Fridays. I understand this week that Ginny, retired from U of M, has now found us a couple of MSU, she said MSU interns working at Math and Botanical Gardens. She said she directed them to the website, and that's where you can click on and just join the meeting with us any Friday from 7 to 8, most Fridays from 7 to 8. Ooh, look at that. It almost looks like feathers, doesn't it, on the back of that butterfly?
Carol has a question. She says, "Hi, Stephen. Uh, for photo editing, do you use Photoshop, Photoshop Elements, Lightroom, or some other program?" I use a combination of Photoshop Elements and Bridge.
And I use Photoshop Elements pretty exclusively. There
Yeah.
are, I do some video editing to trim off the edges of our recordings when we put them on and load them up. I use a different program for that. But Photoshop Elements works pretty well. Photoshop itself, the whole big package gets
Intense.
there. Yeah, there's too much to do there.
But it all matters what you're used to. If you've been working in Lightroom, you might like that approach better, especially when you're looking at, I use Bridge to look at all the images, then move them over to
Yeah.
Elements if we need to adjust them.
Yeah.
And
Change.
ideally, you take a photograph you don't need to adjust. but that doesn't always work.
No, I took pictures early in the morning and had to take the shadows out of some things. Well, in our garden this week, before we get into the things that people were writing us about, it was a combination of weeds, freebies, and the shorn plants. I like to know the names of weeds. I know that this is an oxalis, a yellow wood sorrel back here. This is one that I said, you know, I looked that one up before. If you break the leaf, it has kind of stringy fibers inside of it. It's called down at carrion flower, and it's related to the other smilax. One is a vine that gets little hooks on it and leaves like this and travels all over the place. Many of them are native. Many of these weeds are native, and you look and say, well, maybe I should leave it there. I have not let that one grow to full size to see what it turns into, but I like to know the names. This is one that for years I said, oh, I gotta look that up. But the leaf alone wasn't giving me any help. These leaves generally lay flat on the ground and it likes to grow in the shade. You got to get it when it's blooming, and then you have a confirmation of what the flower looks like or how the flower is arranged. And when I saw this flower, I said, "Oh shoot, should have known what that is. That's an Avens. It's a Geum, they're called. If you grow Geum Mrs. Bradshaw, she has little orange flowers on her that kind of daisy form. It's not in the daisy family, but then these seed heads are very distinctive. If you did had G and Mrs. Bradshaw, you would recognize this as a relative. So I think maybe I should leave it, but it doesn't have anything in the way of a spectacular flower. It's just a very pale green-white, small cluster of flowers. But when I know the names of the weeds, I feel more powerful when I'm doing things like we weeded in Steve's brother's yard as best we could. But there's bindweed in there, there's thistle in there, there's ground ivy in there. And I like to know the names of the things so that I can curse them with more power. I was told that when I was a little kid that I stumbled in the backyard at Grandma Frances's house. She was a neighborhood good friend that we called Grandma. And I fell on top of a bull thistle and was crying because my hands got prickers on them. And she poured some witch hazel on my hand and she said, honey, it's all because I said that pricky thing got me. She said, honey, it's always more powerful to curse it by name. So if you want to know weed names, it's good to have. I've made it from a little section, and every time I go, I take enough mulch to do another 2-hour section. And in 6 hours, I've got a good handle on the back bed. And Steve, we're going to need to get grass seed. I'm going to seed in this area that we don't need
Yeah.
anymore as I move through the vegetable gardens. And Bernie was asking about weeds too. She said, over here where I planted this peony, just to kind of fill space till the hydrangea gets going. She said, this other branch is in with it, and it's not a peony. What is that? That's beggar's ticks. And in fact, I said, big beggar's ticks, big devil beggar's tick.
Mhm.
It's a Biden's. It's going to get little yellow flowers on it, daisy family flowers. Um, and those form a seed that looks like this and ends up sticking in your socks, and they stick straight out to the side, and the dogs come in with them on all the time. It's another native. I kind of like it. When we were doing that fundraiser for the hockey team last year at the golf course, Steve, the
Yeah.
Biden's was because it's a facultative. It's described as a indicator of a wetland. It likes wet soil, and it was growing along the edge of that pond that was across from where I was working. And bright yellow flowers all over the plants. They were very attractive, but not if they're in a place where you don't want it. And how did they get there? You know, Bernie says I was only gone a little while. Birds can bring them in. Your shoes can bring them in. They might come in with the plants, the seeds, but they're all over the place. And it's native all over, almost all over. Doesn't like Texas and Arizona and New Mexico, Colorado.
Utah.
But speaking of weeds and how they get around, Bernie and I were discussing her fall blooming clematis. I love fall blooming clematis. I wish that I could grow it, but I don't anymore if I can help it because we were walking the dog. Yeah, we were walking the dogs around the neighborhood, and a neighbor on the far side of the block. So as the crow flies, at least 4 houses away, hailed me, and she said, "I think this is a clematis coming up here in my garden. Can you tell me if it is?" I looked, I said, "Yep, that's a clematis." And I thought, uh-oh, I know what clematis that is. The seed from this clematis gets all over the place. And this clematis, which Bernie was congratulating herself for keeping under control this year because it is hard to keep it from getting onto grabbing hold of that tree and going across the top of the tree. It's a good 30, 40-foot vine when it gets going and it can inundate things. So we grow weeds as well as, whoops, as well as pull weeds. Is
Yeah. Margaret has a hand up.
that Margie? Yep.
It's Margaret's iPhone.
Right. And I think that's Margie Hopkins. I'm not sure, but go ahead. Look at that iridescent color. Why are they so colorful when they're so brown all the way around?
Okay. All right.
What you got?
Okay. I'm out front, out the window of the kitchen window, and I have these two groups of black-eyed Susans. And I think you were talking about this the other day. The leaves have these brown splotches all over them.
Are they angular sided splotches? There'll be pictures if so they're more rectangular or trapezoidal. They're not round.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Septoria leaf spot, and it's the black-eyed Susan Goldstrom is very susceptible to it. Many of the others are too. Purple coneflower can get it. You don't really want to be nurturing that. So any leaves that you see with that on it, if you can get that or that crown out and get rid of it, you're better off. And then find a different black-eyed Susan.
Okay. Okay. So, like, for now, like, because they look pretty, the flowers look pretty. So, for now, just cut out as many of these blotchy seeds as I can,
Yeah.
or dig them out right now.
Well, I would dig them out right now because I know
Just
they're
get rid of
pretty,
them.
but yeah, but I like to do it when I'm thinking of it because then 2 months go by and more leaves were blotchy and it spread itself around. But yeah, you can just take leaves off and let it bloom. Enjoy the
Okay.
flowers.
Because it's part of the scene here.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. There's
Thank you.
definitely high time for yellow flowers. This is the big leaf aster that we've been exclaiming about, and some others who grow it have been exclaiming. It's bloomed. It started over a month ago, and is blooming 3 times as tall as we've ever seen it bloom, and it's
And
just glorious. I'd like to make it plant of the week, except I don't know where to put it in terms of when it looks best. Isn't it gorgeous? I was looking at it this week and realizing that it blooms kind of like Coreopsis does. The stalk grew up and bloomed here. See, these are petals are dying back and seed is forming here. So that stalk bloomed first. Then side branches grew up beyond and bloomed. Now lower side branches are growing up and blooming and still producing new buds up here. So deadheading this is a matter of reaching in the middle and taking the middle out.
it's a very impressive plant.
Yeah, I cut the stem. I darn it. Come on. Yeah. I cut the stem primarily to see whether it would make a new flowering stalk. I could cut it down to just above here, and this stem stalk that's already growing would come up and flower. I'm pretty sure of that. But what I want to know is whether the base of the plant is going to send up a whole nother stalk. New plant for me in the garden. We've always just admired it in the woods. It's also a time for freebies. The heat breaks in the third week of August. Last year it was late, but this year it came right on time. And once the heat breaks, we start moving things around. Julie, well, we were taking out a little horse chestnut that had seeded itself into Deb's garden. And Julie said, I'm going to take this home. Yeah, it'll make the move pretty well. Look at that great root
Yeah.
that it's got. Isn't that beautiful?
And at the right depth and woohoo.
Yeah, they just take off. I've also been pruning because now is the time to prune to keep things small, foundation plantings, trees that you keep small. I only prune them once a year, which means that for about 3 weeks from late July, when they get furry, stringy, um, look like this, they stay like this. I don't want to prune them until I start seeing the buds at the tip of the branches stopping growing because I want them to not grow after I prune them. I want them to stay put until they get into heavy growth next year. So I wait till now, and my son and daughter-in-law put up with them looking shaggy. This year they didn't. Corey got out his hedge trimmers and he trimmed off the stuff, and he said, I got them, Mom, you don't have to do them. I said, yeah, Corey, I do, and I'll show you why. So he sheared And people do this all the time. They shear the plant, and because the new growth that came out is becoming woody, they shear only down to where it's difficult to shear, where they start running into woody branches. And if you do that, that stem right there, which is a new stem, has extended itself an inch and a half. So by cutting only to that point, you've let the plant increase its size by an inch and a half. And that doesn't sound like much, but give it 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and these plants creep up and start eating our windowsills and windows. So what you need to do is cut all the way back to where you've cut before, to the same place that you've cut before, and take out the places like this that have started having a whole cluster of maturing stems together in one place. So I reach in and take that cluster, I clip it back, way back into the plant, let it grow from inside. Now these branches back here, little buds back there, buds on the trunk are now getting light, and they will come out nice and soft and feathery, and I won't have to cut them back for a while. So I shear and then pat to find those. And yes, it leaves holes. You can see the hole right there where I took that little cluster out. But
It's not meant to be a topiary that is perfectly smooth. It's a shrub.
well, uh, in pure language, it is a topiary. If you shape a plant
Oh,
other
you're
than
right.
in its natural shape, then it's a topiary. But
Yes, ma'am.
this one we want to be soft, and if you step back, those holes just become texture, so you can see light coming through. And if light's coming through, then the plant doesn't open up. And then I step back and look at the two of them. Fortunately, because of the brick, I can count how many bricks high it is above the window to try to keep them the same. But they started out looking like this. This is not them. I could take you back, but I won't take you back to the years when it started. They'd been sheared so many times just at that point where all of the clusters of branches were starting, that all of the foliage was way up at the top and everything inside was so densely shaded that it was dying back. And it's tedious to clear that out, but you got to clear out all the dead stuff, all the dead twigs, and then let light in and let those start growing. Then you can cut them back and ask them to grow from lower down. And it's a long process. I would rather stay on top of it. So I told my son, I'll do it. And that goes for the actual topiary, as Steve calls them, out in the garden. This shaggy area that you see here is the topiaries that I did for my grandkids of insects in the garden. I shear first, so I have sheared this side of the ladybug, and I'm going to shear this side. After shearing, I use hand pruners and find those heavy branched sections and take them out. So I have a ladybug, that's her antenna back there, her head, she's facing the other way, a butterfly facing a bee. And there was a little problem last year with a yellow jacket's nest in underneath the bee and the butterfly, so they didn't get pruned as well as they should. So they took a little extra pruning this year. But there's lots of little divots in there where I let light get in, because these are very thin creations. But they're a lot of fun. As long as the kids don't sit on them, they keep trying to ride them, and those branches do break. Things that have a more natural shape and tendency to grow the way that you want them to grow, like this arborvitae that we put in for Steve's brother. I think it was 4 years ago, we took it down to this level right here and cut the sides, narrowed the sides. Now it's time to do it again. So if you prune drastically, when you reach far into the plant, you can make this pruning process that might take you, it takes me an hour to do each of those topiaries. Not quite so long to do the pyramidal ones by the house. And I don't want to have to do that every year if I can help it. So if I can do it every 2, 3, 4 years, take the tip back to here, so there's room for it to grow, and then thin the sides so that they're narrow again, then this becomes Kurt's good place to put his Christmas lights, and I don't have to come back and drag my orchard ladder back there again so soon. Any questions on that?
We don't have any questions. Carol said she had a Max, so she'd be able. She's Elements was on sale, but she decided not to get it. Maybe next time. That's all we've got.
So many places to spend our money, don't we?
Yeah.
So plant of the week. Thought about Plumbago, but it's really it either started early this year or I'm way off imagining where it was. I always thought that it was the middle of August, but it started early in August. So it's not looking great, although I like the blue and the butterflies like it. And maybe I'm a little obsessed with blue. When it's hot in August, I like the blue flowers more than the yellow. But blue lobelia is a great flower, and it's a native that blooms for a long time. It's in Collinsonia in the foreground there. Likes the wet. It's seeded itself in right next to the pond, and has its blooms starting at the bottom, and the tip keeps growing up. So it's a terminal flower cluster. It's got a lot of bloom time left on it. And if I want to, I could clip that stem off and get more stems coming up. So that was a possibility. So was the hosta plantaginea. There are a lot of different species of hosta. Most people just call them all hosta, but this is the species that blooms late and fragrant, um, sometimes called the Old August lily. And I like this hosta a lot. And it's just opening up. Hummingbirds like it too.
Yep. They come to it.
But we're suckers for blue. I am, Steve is. So we're going with the blue bush clematis, Clematis heracleofolia. The variety Davidiana has darker flowers. Heracleofolia means Hercules-sized foliage, large leaves. It has large leaves. It is a bush-type clematis. It doesn't climb. And if you're there at the right time of day, the flowers are fragrant, which is really nice. And there's a hybrid of it, and I've forgotten which other vining clematis they put it with, called Mrs. Robert Bryden, that is just smothered with flowers this time of year.
The catalog showed it with a deeper blue flower.
Right, they look white there, but they're actually you can see the blue. I was a little disappointed because I prefer a deeper blue, but it's still a great plant, and the pollinators were all over it, Steve.
Oh yeah,
Those
they
pictures.
like it.
So that's Mrs. Robert Bryden. And the blue bush clematis can get as big as this, but doesn't droop so far over to the sides. It tends to lean over to the side, put its elbow down, and come back up, so that the whole thing ends up about this tall. But you don't have branches laying out to the side like you do on the hybrid. I don't have a picture of a good-sized straight species, but it is a much nicer blue, I think. That's our baby one in our backyard. There's a nice one at the Waterford Library if you're ever in that area. And lots of buds still to come. It's kind of hard to find at the nursery because in the spring it doesn't look like anything. It's just a chopped back bunch of sticks because we just cut it all the way back to the ground every year. And by the time it's blooming now, many people have done buying for the year, but it's a good plant. And more to come. Things that haven't even budded up, which I have to keep reminding myself of because this time of year I can get very disgruntled with the garden. So many things are brown, so many things need to be propped up or cut back. I look for the new stuff.
Yep. Nancy was wondering environmental requirements for the blue lobelia. Hers did not come back.
The funny thing about blue lobelia is it likes kind of like foxglove. It seems to like to pick its particular place. I put one in and then let it show itself up in other places. So it blooms the first year and I get a few seeds and it comes up. I noticed the same thing at Toledo Botanical Gardens and at the library, our rain garden at the Waterford Library. We put in a dozen red lobelias and a dozen blue lobelias. I was hoping to get a few crosses out of them. And I thought the red lobelias would die back because they need a lot of water to really do well. But the red lobelias all came back, and none of the blue lobelias came back. None of them. They all said, "No, we don't like it here." I said, "Oh well." Then the next year, there were seedlings coming up, and they'd moved themselves 2 feet over and 1 foot to the west. They just found better places for themselves. So you might have to let it do it itself. That's my take on it anyway.
Yeah. Diane in Waterville says, I too get the white Evans,
White
the
avens, yeah.
Cambodian weed in her beds. It's one of the more, quote, legitimate looking weeds. And I was tempted into leaving it to see what it does. I can report it doesn't offer anything worthwhile, just a nondescript white flower that looks like a weed.
Like a weed, yeah, yeah. And it doesn't, I wish that the foliage did a little bit more. Maybe somebody could improve it a little bit and make it lighter because it likes the shade. It's a good plant for the shade. Heard from Mark about a redbud. He said he planted a redbud. And for the first couple of years, it didn't do very much, and then it really started to grow, and now it's trying to take over the landscape. He wants to know can I do anything about this? And yes, you can, but you're going to have to prune every year or two as they grow fast. So here's what his red bud has done. He says, I can't even get to the water tap to turn the hose off and on because there's so many branches in the way. Um, uh, I like to prune when you can see what you're doing. So late winter, early spring is a good time to do it since you can see what's going on. And what we'd suggest is first go in there, maybe now while it's blooming, maybe before it blooms so that you don't have to cry about it, and take off all of the lower branches that are trending down into the space that should be people space or should be space for other plants. I've put blue slashes by some of the places where you could take branches right off of there. Then go up to the main limbs and shorten the main limbs. See the green slashes in a couple of places. So shorten the main limbs. So this one right here, you could shorten and let this side branch become the new end, which takes off about 4 feet over here. So you can shorten the branches, and it's best to do that in late winter or early spring so you can see it. And the only bloom that you're going to lose is branches that you take off. If it's not blooming yet, of course, not going to be there to bloom, but you won't lose any of the bloom that's set on the structure you left in place. And there's plenty of time for the plant to grow and set flower buds for the next year on the new structure. So looking at it closer in, if you're looking to shorten a branch on a tree, whatever, that's the thing. If you're looking to shorten a tree, make it shorter or narrower, then you have to look and say, how much did it grow in a year? There's the new growth that's not branched yet. Grew about 18 inches in a year. So if I want it to be smaller, I have to cut it back. If I take this branch off, gone, I cut at the green. Now this is going to be the new end. I have not gained anything. I'm right out there and it's going to grow 18 inches the next year and boom, I'll be right back out again. So I might have to cut at a node that faces outward down here to bring it shorter. So you're going to take each main branch and shorten it that way. Whoa. And it's branch by branch. You take a look at what it is. And if you cut at the orange mark, then the branch that you leave going at the top will be dominant and pull the growth in that direction. And I meant to put Julie's birch tree in here, but we'll have to worry about that next week. No questions? It's pruning stuff. Well, it hurt the red bud to prune it now. Does not hurt. You can prune it now. If you're trying to keep something small, this is a good time to prune because they've had plenty of time for their leaves to build, create carbohydrates, build up root, build up starch reserves in the tree. But if you prune them now, then you deny them the last 6-8 weeks of more energy. So if you're trying to keep them small, what you want to do is have them enough energy to keep healthy, but not enough energy to get really blown out in size wise later. So it's a good time to prune, and you can prune redbuds now. It's just with Mark's redbud and like many redbuds, it's pretty full and hard to figure out what you're doing. But if you can see what you're doing or you know what you're aiming for, it's a good time to do it. Gretchen sent in a picture of a dwarf Alberta spruce. She said, and it's showing its true nature. Once a mutant, I say always a mutant. She sent in this picture. That is not a tree in the background there. That is a white spruce growing out of the dwarf Alberta spruce. And Steve and I have noticed over the years that maybe 1 in 10 of these mutants. Now, this was originally this plant and this plant and this plant down here. They were cloned. Usually cuttings are taken from a witch's broom on a full-size white spruce. And they grow with tinier needles and much slower in size, much denser. But they came from a mutation and they can sport back or revert back again. And that's what's happened over here. Other things can do it too. Dogwoods are kind of famous for this is the variegated dogwood called elegantissima, and it's sported, it reverted, and has a all green leaf. Often they'll sport and send up a branch with all white leaves. Usually that branch dies because there's no starch buildup in that branch. It's too weak to stay alive because it doesn't have any chlorophyll. But lots of things can revert. This is a lace leaf buckthorn used as a hedge plant. And in pruning it, I said, oh, look, it's reverted. One of the branches has gone back to the full-sized. Um, this is Bernera, big leaf forget-me-not. And it's possible that this green leaf next to it is a seedling plant coming up next to it, but not this one in the middle or this one over here. One of the crowns has reverted and you have to find the crown and cut it out or dig the plant up, divide it and get rid of the part that's reverted, or the green one will overgrow the one that has less green. It's just a matter of math. More green cells makes more starch, means grows faster than one with less green cells. So on a dwarf Alberta spruce that does this, you need to go look inside the plant to find where that branch came from, because it's where the branch came from that's where the mutation happened, that bud when it first came out. So you're looking for the bigger needles, yeah, little needles on the dwarf Alberta spruce, and bigger needles and bigger branches. And this one is actually, there's the trunk of the dwarf Alberta spruce. This is the trunk of the reverted piece. And if you let them go that long, it's a lot harder than taking off this, and a lot less likely that you're going to get all of the reverted nodes out of there. But that's what you'd have to do. And better to do it a lot earlier because this is shaded out and change the form of that dwarf Alberta spruce. Real common though. When they first happen, you see just one piece poke out, and that's the time to get it.
You don't want to let them just grow and see what they do, because that dwarf Alberta won't be able to hold up the mass of that
Right, right. It's trying to be a
white pine,
full-size tree.
white fruit.
It'll pull the dwarf Alberta spruce right out of the ground eventually. It'll tip right over or split the trunk. Pawpaws,
Indeed.
pawpaw season. Huh. Diane told us about a stump, and we talked about it a couple weeks ago about could she get it out herself and what should she put there instead. It's a formidable stump, but she was better. So, and thank you very much for taking such good pictures, because we need to tell people how to do these things. I had described to Diane that I dig with a trowel so that I can see a flare root and then saw through it. Then grab hold of the lever that you've left in a long branch and tip it and see whether you can tip it to the side so you can cut more. And she said she worked in the morning until it got hot and had to cut several times. But then she tipped and it came out. She said, so this loser that had Japanese maple scale, um, uh, mildew, every problem that a lilac can have, it had. And she's showing us here, she said, yep, and there's the borers.
Yeah.
That hole right there is the exit hole for the clear wing moth that lays its eggs on the weak crotches, bark missing on the lilac, and the caterpillar chews inside, and they weaken the plant year by year by year by year. They come out and lay more eggs every year. So quite the close-up of the woolly thyme this time of year.
Yeah.
A cool little knot bee, Steve. I was trying to catch this one, and I never showed you this before. This is one of those flies that disguises itself as a bee. See the stripes on it?
Yep.
Yeah.
They're pretty cool. Tonya was wondering, can you prune down an overgrown viburnum?
Yes, you can. You do have to remember that viburnums all all act like crazy things when you prune them hard. They just send up suckers all over the place. So you're going to have to thin out if you prune it down hard. And it doesn't seem to matter if you prune it down hard now or if you prune it down hard in the spring. It still says, I'm a viburnum and I get to do 6 stems for every stem you took out of me.
At least in our experience.
Oh, it is Ginny. Hi, Ginny. Aster yellows. We've been talking about aster yellows off and on for a while. It is a virus. Well, I think it's a mycoplasma. It's one of those things that's not quite a bacteria, not quite a fungus, but it is a disease of the daisy family, the aster family. So it's called aster yellows. All of the aster family can get it, and it weakens the plant. You get yellowing leaves, you get dying stems, and it also opens the plant up to other problems. And we tell people if you see what looks like aster yellows, bite the bullet and remove the plant that looks like that. Anne sent in pictures from a friend's garden. She said, look at these cone flowers. She said they've got spots on the leaves and weak, weird flowers. And these are the angular spots that I was mentioning before we got officially started to Nancy here. Angular as in the edges they stop at the veins, but they're also squared off rectangles. That's septoria leaf spot, almost for certain. And it's quite contagious in the garden among the plants in the aster family. And it probably wouldn't be in the purple coneflower, except the purple coneflower is weak, which we know from look at that weird flower. And that weird flower is partially because of aster yellows, it can do that, but also because there's a mite infestation almost for certain in there. And the mites are doing kind of what a grain of sand does inside of an oyster. It irritates and the tissues of the plant, like the tissues of the oyster, grow around it. But you get double yolk flowers. So rather than one flower with petals all the way around, you get two flower heads with the petals clumped together. Some people find this interesting to look at, but you need to take that out. This is spread now to other plants in the daisy family. This is daisies, and they're looking bad too. So take out what looks like it has aster yellows. And no, milkweed doesn't get aster yellows, and salvia doesn't get aster yellows. They have their own problems, their own family afflictions. This week we also had a sewing class. I realized in working with my granddaughter and one of her friends that they didn't even know how to thread a needle, and I thought I'd taught them that. So I made the kids sit down and learn how to thread a needle and sew a button on. And my grandson was at first not very enthused. He did a good job though. His buttons are right there. Both his buttons, one regular button, one shank button, ended up on the right side of the material. This person, I think this was pretty Steve. She's got a button on one side and then realized it was the wrong side and put it on the other side. Haley needed to have an embroidery hoop so that she would stop sewing the edges of the material in underneath the button. Very interesting. I told them that they're going to be much in demand when they're in a dorm room or apartment. Their roommate's going to come in and say, I don't know how to put this button on, and they're going to know how to put a button on. Oh, Janet sent me an article, and I wish I didn't have to read these things, but the beaches have another problem. So many pests, so many pathogens coming through. It's called beach leaf disease. And we've had beach bark disease. We have, anyway, we'll get into that in a minute. But beach leaf disease has been moving in on the continent too. We don't know too much about it yet, but it can make the leaves look very weird, striped, curled, leathery, and thick in texture. And it saps the strength of the tree. The younger the tree, the quicker it saps it and it dies, but you'll see that kind of look. New York Conservation Resource District has I think, the best bulletin on it. Doesn't tell us much right now because it's still unknown how it spreads. They're pretty sure that it's a nematode. Those are little relatives of roundworms, the ones that cause worms inside intestines or in skin and your toes and whatever. They're relatives of those that live in plants. And how the nematode is being spread around, they're not sure. Are birds spreading it around? Is it being spread by people moving plants from one place where it is already to other plants? They're even not sure, nor do they even know for sure exactly where it came from to start with. But the bulletin that New York has out has pictures and shows you things that look similar to it that are problems that beaches can have, like mildew, an iridium patch, anthracnose where the leaves turn brown, blights, aphid blight, and rolling aphids. so that you can take a look and see, is something going on with my beach? This is in New York, the counties that are reporting it in New York and how much of it is there. If you look up beach leaf disease and Michigan, you'll find invasives.gov, Michigan.gov, our invasives group has article, a bulletin, which is very similar to New York's, but without so many pictures. I like pictures. But they do have a map to show you where it is, and it's been reported. You can see it's moving across. So be on the lookout. If you've got a beech tree, we have 4 of them, and we were really looking forward to making a hedge out of them.
Yep.
But poor trees, something always going on. My sister lives in Oregon, so she's got that temperate rain forest to walk around in, and her dog here is looking where the dog always looks, because that's where the raccoon is always climbing down the branch.
Yep. No questions.
Okay. Question from Diane about fertilizing annuals. She said, how often do you fertilize them? What are you doing with? I have to tell people all the time that you look at the instructions on the fertilizer package that you've got, and then you observe, because some plants are greedy, they call them greedy, or heavy feeders. Roses are heavy feeders, clematis are heavy feeders. Lantana is a heavy feeder. I kind of think that it's a lot of the ones that like to live in swampy, wet, rich soils, but some things are going to need more than others. Diane fertilized, shoot, I didn't bring the notes out with me. I think 2 weeks ago. You can chime in anytime you want to, Diane. And see the salvia, red salvia here. The new growth is coming in very nice and green. The old leaves are dropping off. You could actually just pull those off of there. And does it need more fertilizer? It probably does. Many of these salvias, I've seen salvias still blooming nicely in October. It's got a long time to grow yet, so let it keep growing. So, for instance, on this package of plant food, it says for indoor, well, we'll do outdoor plants. Outdoor plants, they want 1.5 tablespoons for 1.5 gallons. It's a tablespoon per gallon. It's pretty easy to remember. And they recommend feeding the plants every 1 or 2 weeks. So once a week, go around and feed them. I don't do that. I take that 1 tablespoon per gallon and I split it up. If I'm going to be using 3 or 4 gallons of water, and I know how much water I'm going to be used on the containers, on the planters. If I'm going to use 3 gallons of fertilizer water during the week, I just split that tablespoon up among the 3 gallons so that everybody's getting a little bit all the time. Our friend David uses fish emulsion, so he's using organic fertilizer, and he dilutes the fish emulsion the way that it says on the jar. And every week through about the end of July, he waters in fertilizer. But with the potting mixes that we've got, there's no minerals in there, and the plants are going to need something sometime during the year. In the ground, entirely different story. But we fertilize them, watch the color, decide, well, its lantana needs to get more. This lotus vine doesn't need any. This black and blue, the black and blue salvia is another woody plant. And it was fertilized, I think Diane said that she fertilized this a week and a half before. And you can see the response. I think you can see the response in the lantana down here at its feet, but not so much here. We're growing new shoots from further down. A lot of woody plants can't mobilize nutrients as well, can't move them around quite as well. And it may give up these bigger branches that are already up there. So you might want to cut out a couple of the tall branches if it's been let go to where it's this pale.
I think we've seen though, oh yeah, those are pale though, Colorado. We've seen yellow leaf salvia with the blue flower down south, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, but I don't think black and blue, I don't think the variety black and blue does.
Oh, okay. And the new growth is coming better, I think, right?
Yeah, well, this is lantana down at the bottom here.
The other one. Okay.
There is new growth coming. You can see some shoots back here.
Yeah.
So lantana is definitely one that it likes a lot of extra. Using pictures that we were sending back and forth through email, not about gardens. My sisters have lost the baby pictures from our family, and they wanted to know who these are. I said, well, I think that's me on the left. I always was told it was mine, but I don't know if that's me. I think that's Peggy on the right, but who knows? Why don't people ever write on the back of the pictures when they put them in there? I told
Yours
them,
is, it wasn't, we have one framed and I thought it was written on that it
no,
was.
it's not written on. I took it apart
Oh,
to find out. But this one that I think is me has been hanging next to Steve's baby picture for years. I said, I think I heard Steve's baby picture say, I hope I didn't fall in love with the wrong babe here because maybe that's my sister. Um,
wow.
Cracked trunk. I heard about this from uh-oh, Deb. Yeah, Deb and Michelle. Or Deb, is Michelle here today? Um, you think I'm on the right, Therese? Yep, I
Yep,
should probably
I'm here.
oh,
Michelle Armstrong is here.
oh, okay. So Michelle was in her friend Deb's yard where I've been also years ago and looking at a cracked trunk. And we need to talk about this more because often those vertical cracks in trees are indicative of a problem that started in the roots, but they might not be fatal. So this is a tulip poplar, tulip tree, Liriodendron, and this is what we're looking at, right? Is that what got your attention first, Michelle?
Actually, the dead branches
Dead
above her
branches.
head is what first got our attention. And then I walked around to the back and said, holy simoles.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So the dead branches caught your attention first.
yeah.
Okay, then we'll deal with the dead branches first. On a tulip poplar, which are I can't be 20 years ago that we put it in there.
Oh, I don't know. It was a while ago.
It was a while ago, but I don't think it was 20 years. I would call this a 20-year tulip poplar. But they're very fast growing, very big trees. The idea was to get some shade and something better to look at than the stuff that used to be growing along the edge of the property. In the woods, they would normally, through natural attrition, be losing lower branches to their own shade, and especially to the shade of other plants if they crisscrossed on top of them. So that might be a natural loss, and you can prune them off, um, take them off now, and then watch for more dead to find out is this an ongoing process, or is it dying back and they're just going to lose the lower branches. But if you look at the top looks like it's the proper density, like the plant is growing at a good rate on the top. So I think we've got still a healthy tree here, or one that could be healthy. This is woundwood. This roll that's growing in here is woundwood. That's woundwood that's rolled all the way onto the inside of this oak tree, which is even bigger than that tulip poplar and still standing real steady. What often happens to trees is if a flare root is damaged too close to the trunk, closer to the trunk than a foot for every inch of diameter of the tree trunk, then the chances are that any open end of that damaged root can start rotting, and the rot will go into the tree and follow a column up through the tree because there's no barrier like there is between a branch and the trunk that sets one set of cells separate from the other. So the tree will load up that whole column that comes up from the bad root. The tree will load up that whole column with resin, which is an antifungal agent. And now there's a column which, if I cut the tree up into boards, would be knots. A column of discolored wood, but it can contain the damage. If the tree heats up, like on a warm winter afternoon, and then gets cold quickly, the part inside that's full of resin doesn't freeze and thaw at the same rate as the unaffected wood. And it can, if it's a big enough column, it can cause the bark to split, to pop, to crack. And if the plant is growing vigorously, and this tulip poplar looks like it's growing pretty vigorously, it can grow past that and heal over. So I would give it some time. If it was my tree, I would give it some time. But I don't know what,
Two, there really can be beautiful big trees.
yeah, I don't know. I can't tell what's going on in this picture, Michelle. So can you explain to me where this is? Is this the base of the trunk?
Yep, this is the back underneath that crack. And to me, it felt like it was flatter. So, which would seem like a girdled root or something.
Yeah, it could be. It could be that there was a girdled root there. There was a girdle there and it killed the root. It could also be that if the neighbor was clearing out some stuff, there used to be a lot of uh,
Uh, they did a
volunteer.
lot of clearing out in the back neighbor.
Yeah, there were volunteer trees all along that lot line, and the tree's root could have been cut on the other side of the fence, and that's still close enough to the tree this big to cause that problem. But I would watch it, and an arborist, if you call someone in to take the branches off, a certified arborist can test the tree for how much solid wood it has, and make an estimate for you of how sturdy the tree is. So you can do that. They do it with, there are a couple of different ways they do it. There's an electrical resistance meter that they can put on either side of the tree trunk that tells how much good wood versus decayed wood is inside. And there's a boring technique that they can use, taking out a little sliver of wood and looking at what's going on. But wow, it's really quite the stately tree. Gardeners, we make an impact in the world, don't we?
Of course, the yellow tulip flowers are always way up high, but
Yeah, the best place for a tulip poplar is on the hill going down away from your house so that you're looking down at the top of it. But there are some that keep, if there's nothing else around them, if they're unimpeded, they'll they'll keep the branches lower down. Is that one over
By supercells, hers blooms quite low comparatively.
right, we know one in Troy that kept low branches and you can see the flowers, and there's one over by the Metro Park in Ann Arbor along the Huron River. Remember, right out at the
Oh,
entrance to
yeah. Yeah.
Delhi Park, there's one right at the entrance and it sweeps the ground. You can walk right up to it and touch the flowers. But most of the time, yeah, they're way up above.
thank you for your answer. It was quite long in explanation. We appreciate that.
Oh, well, you guys are welcome. I wouldn't, and how I know what happens if I don't talk about what happens afterwards. And I think, oh man, working too fast. We have 8 minutes left and I'm out of the things that we set up to talk about. What can I do?
Grace thinks you're on the right of that baby pictures.
Let's see. Let me see, where did I put the baby pictures? Supposed to from the beaches. Nope. I can't remember where the baby pictures are, but we should take a vote. Close your eyes.
We'll find it.
Oh, it's not back that far.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Oh, Steve, we're just so slow.
Anyway, Margaret's got a hand up.
Okay, Margaret, what's up?
Margie.
Maybe your hand is still up from when we were talking before.
No, this is new. Well, it was new to me.
Okay.
Oops, wrong person.
Yeah. My
Okay.
oldest.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Okay. This beauty berry is driving me crazy. It's getting so big and it's covering all the other plants up. Now, the one at the library,
Yep.
was it already having purple flowers on it, or was it just blooming the little pink flowers?
It's just blooming. No berries yet.
Okay, so right now, all these little green things going up and on the branches have to turn into flowers
They're
first.
flower buds. Yep.
So
And they are big, wide shrubs when they get going, even if you cut
heck
them
yeah,
down
and
to the
they're
ground.
coming up all over the place around here.
Yeah.
So I could cut them back now anyway if they're covering over other plants that I want to see.
Sure.
Yeah.
Take the
And
extending branches right off.
do you think it's in too much shade? Because there's just a few pink flowers, but most
Yeah.
of the stems are all green.
It may be in too much shade. They're going to flower best when they're in sun.
Sun.
We put them in part sun and they do fine, but I'm not growing any in the full shade. I haven't seen them growing in full shade at botanical gardens and other places, so I'm
hmm
following suit.
So it's just struggling to bloom and then to get berries. So it might not get berries until way into fall now.
Right, yep.
because the one at the library was already bloomed, right? There was the
It's already
pink
blooming.
flowers all
Yeah,
up and down.
yeah, it's blooming.
Yeah, yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, it's
There's a
gotta go.
difference. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So if you want to vote, oh, Nancy says I'm on the right.
Bernadette says the watermelon update. Leaves have rebounded completely. Watermelons are not getting any larger. Days are too short and nights too cold.
Too cool. Well, good. I hope they make it through. I hope that it was just a temporary wet problem.
Tree says looking at eyes and smiles still say Janet is on the right. Uh, what can cause black leaves on a viburnum? They showed up after I sprayed deer repellent on my garden.
Well, depending on what kind of black it is on the leaves, there are oils in some of those repellents that can burn leaves. And we're supposed to try to avoid putting it's like putting super suntan lotion onto a leaf and causing it to burn. So it could be that the repellent itself should have been tested in a innocuous area. What do they say to do that with spot cleaners on clothes, right? And I can't think what the term is that they use for um, trying it out first ahead of time. I remember when Cornell was checking the efficacy of baking soda as a fungicide on phlox. They said first spray because some of the phloxes were the leaves were burning from having the alkaline baking soda put on them. So it could just be that there were oil, the base that particular repellent has is not a good thing to put on, especially if it's over a certain temperature, because the temperature and the sun together act as a burning agent.
Diane says, are we sure those are two different babies? They look
Oh, yeah,
very similar.
yeah, we are sure they're two different babies. There's actually one missing. My two sisters and I are all 18 months apart. They called us the three little girls, and we're trying to find the third picture, which it looks quite different. Well, I think it looks quite different, but I don't know. I don't know. Mom's not around anymore. Can't tell us for sure. My older sister swears that I'm on the left. And I said, well, good, because that's the one that's been hanging.
On the right almost looks like Linda to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty
Therese has a hand up.
okay.
I just wanted to mention, I have been raising the monarch butterflies for a couple of years now, really a joy. But I saw on Facebook the Circe Society, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right,
That's right.
is saying, thank you, is saying that perhaps we may be doing more harm than good if we're raising, larger numbers, and even, like I had 23 eggs at one time, plus another 15 or 20 caterpillars and chrysalises. So, I read the whole article. It's excellent. I did put it on my Facebook page, but it has led me to stop raising monarch butterflies. Now that doesn't mean that, the kids can't raise a couple here and there and whatever, but, they're saying that, they are supposed to get eaten, and the natural selection does weed out the weaker ones and so on. So I just wanted to mention that, as much as I have truly enjoyed it, and I certainly will do it once in a while if I've got a kid around, but, it did seem, the article really convinced me that I'm probably doing more harm than good.
There's quite a bit of that word getting around this year, especially since they've identified a disease that the monarchs pick up, and said if you're going to be raising, like a friend that I have in the neighborhood here says that one of her friends in a garden club that belongs to has been raising 200 monarchs at a time. And according to Brenda Zedick, who's our local and regional butterfly expert, she said you have to sterilize the containers they're in, because all you have one of them that picks up the spores of that particular fungal disease, and it spreads through all of them, and then they take it out and spread it from there. And I doubt very much that people are doing the careful spraying with 10% bleach solution and cleaning things off well enough. So yeah,
I do that because you taught me to do that, Janet, and I dry them in the sun and all of that. And that OE, that parasite, does also come from tropical milkweed, which I don't think will grow in our hardiness zone. But I also, was raising them down in Florida, and that plant is so invasive and all over Florida,
oh,
at least the Keys where I'm
the
at.
one with the yellow and orange flowers.
Yeah, they're beautiful,
Yeah,
but it's not native, and it does produce that OE parasite that makes weak monarchs.
yeah, it does.
So
they can't.
I just wanted to throw that out there.
I'm glad that you did.
Diane is wondering, are we referring to raising monarchs in the house versus outdoors?
Yes,
Well, mine have always been on the porch. I raise them out on my porch, but they are in enclosures.
right, and that's where rather than just letting them take their chances out in the wild. Steve and I have, except where the grandkids bring things into us, we got some black swallowtail eggs last week, which were mishandled and didn't make it to anywhere. We don't do butterflies in the house anymore because we have habitat outside. We put these things outside for them, and I have to step back and say, this is going to work or it's not going to work. I want a sustainable butterfly habitat. So
Yeah.
it's fun to raise them. It is fun to raise them, and Brenda still raises them and cleans things up because she wants to have the experience of raising them. But yeah, this whole bit with people pulling in as many as they can and raising hundreds, it's probably not a good thing. I always worry about when they let loose 100 monarchs, where they're going to find enough nectar. When
Yeah.
you'd have to have a big annual planting theme park nearby just for them, and one that was not ever sprayed with anything. So yeah.
Diane
That was,
said they
I'm
come.
sorry. Oh, I was just going to say that was one of the points in the article, Janet.
Yeah, but what the heck are they going to eat? While I was pruning the topiaries, there were 4 or 5 skipper butterflies, and they were the whole afternoon. They were on the butterfly bush next to me, and so were a lot of bees. So was a monarch, and I have to think that they ran out of nectar at a certain point, but they kept fluttering away, and there wasn't anything else around, so they kept coming back, and I feel like we just need more plants, less lawn and more plants that can sustain
Yep.
other kinds of life.
For sure. Diane said they counted 39 monarch caterpillars on their swamp milkweed yesterday.
All right. All right. 39. That's
I'd
fantastic.
love to see 9,
Yeah. Well,
but we haven't looked.
right. We have
I
to wait.
haven't
We have
looked.
to wade into the middle of the natural area to do that. And
Yeah.
I've been staying out of that area because I think we had an eastern meadowlark
Yep.
nesting in there. Yeah. So
Which may be taking care of a lot of caterpillars.
yeah.
Nancy says, send them her way too, laughing out loud.
The Xerxes, you can find that article on the Xerxes Society, Xerces. Xerxes Society posted that article on their site. It's a very good source of information.
Sorry for those of you that have seen our webinars and know how good Sonia is. She would have had that link up.
And they also talk about raising lightning bugs. There's a link in that article on how to keep lightning bugs in your yard, which is another joy. So
I will always remember the first year that we saw lightning bugs after so many years of just not seeing them at all. It was in the late 80s, and we were in a backyard finishing up a planting late in the afternoon. It was beginning to get dark, and there were lightning bugs. And it was the first that we'd seen. We just stood there and stared at them because we used to catch them when we were little, but then we hadn't seen them for a while. I talked to an entomologist who at the time was with Ohio State University, and eventually went to Rose Exterminator and trains a lot of their pesticide people. But when I talked to him, I said, I'm wondering why there weren't so many for so long. And he said, I said, could it have to do with the residue of insecticide that's in the soil. There was a insecticide used pretty regularly around the foundations of new houses that had a 20-year residual and was used to hopefully prevent termites from getting in. Chlordane. And chlordane got outlawed in 74 because it was found to be cancer causing. So chlordane went away in terms of new use, but the chlordane was still in the soil. And I asked whether or not that might have had a difference. And he said it could make a difference. He said, I remember when they took down one of the buildings on the campus, when they were doing the demolition, as soon as they got down to the foundation level, you could smell the chlordane that had been applied there all those years earlier. So it could be that we got a rebound of the lightning bugs about 20 years after chlordane was outlawed. And I hope that's what it is. I also hope that the huge numbers of ants is also part of a boom bust. There was a bust and now there's a boom. They live in the soil too, and that will even itself out and there won't be quite so many ants. Thank you, Carol. Carol found the Monarchs article and has put a link up there. You guys are good.
Yep. It's after 8, 5 after.
Oh, God, time just sips on by. Okay. So we'll end with our liverwort there. Cool plant. Well, it's not a plant. And say that's it for this Free for All Friday. We'll be back next Friday, the 29th. Our September webinar isn't going to happen until toward the end of the month in order to stay away from the holiday and to get the speaker that we wanted to have. So we're having quite a few Free for All Fridays in a row. So we'll see you next Friday. If you've got questions, you can email them to us or text them to us. Many of you have our number already. Those of you who don't, it's on the website. You just got to look for it and we'll let it go from there. It's also, let's see, this weekend, if you know Jim Slazinski at Golden Walsh Nursery, he's opening his garden this weekend. And you might want to contact us or Jim if you need directions to get there because it's a fabulous garden. Acres.
Yep. He says it's an open house.
Yeah.
Come on.
Have a wonderful weekend.
Take care, everybody. Thank you. Ta-ta for now.